Hey Sri Lanka, this is Yasmin Yusuf from DecibelLK, and I have with me Ajantha Ranaweera, who currently has an amazing, super deep exhibition that's happening at Paradise Gallery. It's called A Boy in Paradise. And you might think, yeah, the title, it sounds a little very fun, but it's very, very deep stuff. Um, Firstly, Ajantha, my deepest condolences and my heart goes out to you because I feel like what you're bringing to the table when it comes to your exhibition, it's something a lot of people in the island have also sort of spoken quite about, and some of them have difficulties with accepting the disappearance of a loved one. I hope you're okay, man.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, it happened when I was 10 years old. But Yasmin, the exhibition is more or less not about me and him, but everybody who has disappeared. It can be due to the war, or it can be other kind of disappearances due to political instability and so many other things, right? And especially, I'm not taking sides on this. The other thing with this is it's more about the loved ones who are left behind and how they can find peace within themselves to move forward. And disappearance are very different from death. You know, you have in deaths you have a certain closure. And
Yeah.
I mean, knowing Sri Lanka, we have these religious kind of rituals in every religion where you kind of part ways and then bless the one who kind of passed away, and then you look towards the future. But disappearances are tricky because the word that I would use is the state of existence. You don't know whether they are dead, whether you don't know they're alive, or what kind of state they're in, and you're always like in your heart you're unsettled. And this is something I would say that will remain with you for a long period of time. I don't think it'll stop at any moment, right? The longer, I mean, it takes, maybe sometimes you ease off this pain, but it's something that never kind of leaves, right?
We were having this conversation just a little while ago on how you've beautifully put all these memories in different gardens, and you had like a very interesting explanation to what the gardens were. Do you want to talk about that?
So Yasmin, the whole aspect of this is when I talk about disappearances, it's just I want to put the one who's disappeared in a place of safety. And then this place of safety for me is in paradise. So that's why it's called Boy in Paradise. And the boy could be anybody, somebody that you can relate to, even put yourself there, so that you can kind of relate to this kind of disappearances and their loved ones. And then through my journey, I felt that I am not alone on this journey. And there are so many people in this situation. If you look at, I mean, if you read Ground Views and so many other newspapers and keep a track of these things, there are these people, right? So in that case, what I'm doing is I'm showcasing paradise, or how do I depict paradise in my work and show people that is through a native or indigenous Sri Lankan garden. So then we have this whole aspect of what we discussed earlier. What is a Sri Lankan garden? And yeah, it's something unique because for me, going through the traditional depictions of gardens are very important. Not the Euro-American way of looking at gardens, but we have these traditional gardens. We have these boulder gardens. I have looked at paddy fields as gardens. Coconut estates are gardens. For example, we had this tradition of planting the same tree 1,000 times in a geometric or a man-made pattern. So it's a garden, right? The question that I asked you, for example, is, look, you go to a temple, you have this Bodhi tree, right, with sand there, right? And if you go to temples like Mulkirigala, where you have these terraces in multiple levels on a rock, and they have taken sand and put on top also, even on top terraces, you have sand. Why would they do that, right? And when I ask you, is it a garden? And you're like, no, I don't think it's a garden. If you go to Japan and you look at the same thing, sand gardens with boulders sticking out, and you might have just one bonsai tree or a tree there, you immediately see that as a garden, right? But in Sri Lanka, we have these traditions, but we kind of overlook them. If you are interested in really reading about these or going deep into this kind of garden traditions, the topic or the discourse that you should Google is decolonization of knowledge. That happens because we have been a colonized nation, and we were always taught to look at Euro-American knowledge and told us that these are superior knowledge to our own native or indigenous knowledge. So this is us relooking at native knowledge. I mean, that comes from my architectural background, but I have related that in depicting my gardens and depicting paradise itself.
It's such an interesting look. Honestly, just having that conversation was such a refreshing thing as well, because I mean, who knew so much about gardens? I mean, for me, it was like, what? I just know so little, but it's interesting. So, was this collection a very, how do I put it? This might sound like a little weird to ask, but was it like difficult for you to put all of this in painting, or was it something that you wanted to do as just wanting to heal from all that you've been through with the disappearance of your brother?
The whole thing about this is, if you look at the discourse of disappearance in Sri Lanka, it's quite discussed. But for me, looking at our generation and the younger generation, for me, I kind of felt that this whole discourse is kind of like a switch on, switch off thing, which we do not really look at, right? Something like a side issue that, we relate to whenever we want, and then we quickly switch off whenever we don't like it. So for me, it was about how we can get involved in this. Because if you look at the broader subject area of disappearances, you have this top-down approach where we are talking about accountability, justice, right? Then you have the two words which comes with that is peace and reconciliation. For the loved ones to go through that and then make peace with themselves and find closure, they need peace and reconciliation, right? But these are all, for most of us, these are like things that are quite heavy, and you have these activists and lawyers and people who are like dedicated themselves to peace, and then this kind of discourses have looked into and still looking at to, and I have quite a lot of respect to what they're doing right now, right? But for me, it's how do you work from bottom up? How do I get involved, and how you can get involved in the whole process, right? First thing is, it starts with a dialogue. That's how it starts with me. It's a dialogue within my head, because unless we have that dialogue and then with yourself, and you come to peace and terms, and then you start discussing this within yourself, it's very difficult to move forward. Within that, the second approach is having that dialogue with each other, like your friends, like what you had, right? Through my artwork and all this. For me, this secondary dialogue happens through my art, right? Where I always feel that with all these kind of issues like disappearances and things like that, we need to have this community dialogue, right? And then we need to have this dialogue within a safe space where each of us do not have to be afraid of expressing ourselves. And when dialogues start, it might not be right or wrong, right? I might have a completely different view, or it might, the way that I articulate it or word it might come out as offensive sometimes. But this dialogue needs to be out of mutual respect. I have to mutually respect you, you have to mutually respect me. And when we have this dialogue within a safe platform, that's how we move forward as individuals and then collectively as a society. I saw that this is missing. No, actually, that's not true. It's not missing, but for me, that's my contribution for this larger discourse and through my exhibition and all, right? So the second portion of that is, if you go a bit higher up on this, it's how we relate to peace and reconciliation within our systems of education, right? How can I talk about architecture without talking about peace and reconciliation? How can I do a building in Jaffna without understanding this peace and reconciliation and the whole war and then what we went through and all of that, right? So for me, that's important that these kind of issues, this discourse of disappearances, peace and reconciliation go trickle down into all our fields, like maybe the music industry. I mean, I think it's there in archaeology, art, architecture, and then we look at it on a much broader manner than just, looking at it from a, tunnel vision.
Love it, love it, love it. So your exhibition runs till the 30th of the month, and you said you have one more art walk, and that's on the
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's on 28th Thursday from 6 to 7 onwards. Guys who want to have a chat, I mean, it's again a dialogue. It's not a monologue where I'm talking, but it's really interesting. The last two walks that I had, the last walk last Thursday, I met this girl who was doing her PhD on disappearances. So it was like a super intellectual, like a cerebral kind of discussion with her. But then before that, we had design students, architecture students, like friends who are into IT and cybersecurity, all kinds of guys coming in. And and then when I talk about gardens, they're like, oh man, like are these like really, oh shit, can you say paddy fields as gardens? What is this? And then after gardens, we talk about the disappearances and we talk about discourses. I mean, it happens in layers. Maybe it, going in so deep into the painting might not be your cup of tea. And you might be not ready to have that discussion also, but you can connect with it at any level that you like. And yeah, so feel free to drop by. Maybe you can register online. Also at, you can find it at Paradise Road Gallery Cafe Instagram. Oh, I think Saskia Fernando Gallery also has an Instagram thing on that.
Cool. So now that we have all these dates, honestly, I can't wait to drop by one of these days. And would you be doing more exhibitions after this in the future?
I really haven't thought about it because by profession, I'm a practicing architect. So this is just something that I kind of did for the fun of it. Of course, like all my friends were really supportive. You need to thank, I mean, there are two main people like architect Anjalendran and this Dr. Shanti Javardhana, who's an architectural historian. They have been really important people in my life and they have helped me out on this venture. And also I would like to thank Shant Fernando from Gallery Cafe. He's the one who kind of initiated this thing, and he was like, Ajantha, why don't we do an exhibition? You do it. I'll set up this thing. And it has been a super journey and a really good experience having this initiative and discussing this topic with everybody that we know, and then especially discussing this topic with our generation, because I think the elder generation has been dealing with this for a very long time. And I feel quite relieved and happy that I did this exhibition, and through that I became a part of this broader discourse of disappearances.
I'm so glad to. Hey, here's wishing you all the very best, Ajantha, and Jaiweva to all that you do.
Thank you, Yasmin. It was wonderful meeting you and having this conversation. My pleasure.